The chamber of the Galactic Consular Senate was larger than any human had ever seen. Its ceiling was a cathedral of living light, shifting and swirling with colors that represented the thousands of worlds united under the Senate's authority. The seats curved upward into an endless spiral, each one occupied by an alien representative of a different race, scaled, feathered, luminous, or crystalline. The air itself hummed with translation frequencies, carrying hundreds of languages into one universal tone. And in the center, on a platform lit by a cold blue beam, stood 3 humans. Ambassador Mark Reed looked up at the tiers of alien faces. He had seen pictures of the Senate's chambers before, but standing here was different. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the weight of 1,000 civilizations pressed down on him. He was the first human to stand in this hall as an equal representative, and the eyes of the galaxy were upon him. "Proceed," said the High Chancellor of the Senate. His voice amplified through the entire chamber. He was tall and thin, his skin the color of polished silver. "Humanity stands accused of violating the Interstellar Development Pact. You have advanced your technologies beyond permitted levels. You have engaged in independent planetary defense operations without Senate oversight. You will answer for this." Mark did not flinch. His aides, Lieutenant Hannah Ward and Envoy Daniel Crow, stood silently behind him. Every camera in the chamber was focused on the humans. Every alien waited for the sound of fear, of apology, or of panic. None came. Mark's voice was calm, deliberate. "With respect, Chancellor, Earth has done nothing unlawful. We developed in isolation as we were instructed. We only defended ourselves when raiders from Senate-controlled sectors attacked our colonies." A murmur spread through the chamber, a wave of translated whispers bouncing from wall to wall. The Chancellor's silver eyes narrowed. "Do you accuse this council of negligence, human?" Mark raised his chin slightly. "No, Chancellor. I accuse this council of hypocrisy." The chamber erupted. Shouts, gasps, flashes of light. The translation system struggled to keep up. Hannah glanced at him nervously, but he didn't move. He waited until the noise faded. The Chancellor's voice was colder now. "You come before this body and speak of hypocrisy? You whose species reached faster than light travel a century ahead of schedule? Who constructed orbital defense platforms without sanction? Humanity stands at the edge of destruction, Ambassador. We could extinguish your world before your sun rises again." Mark looked up at the thousands of alien eyes. Then he smiled. "If you could have, you already would have." The silence that followed was sharper than any shout. For 5 full seconds, no one spoke. No one even moved. That moment, broadcast across hundreds of star systems, was the instant when the galaxy realized humanity was not afraid. The hook was done. Now the story of humanity's defiance began. The hearing continued for hours. Alien envoys hurled accusations: unauthorized expansion, military buildup, refusal to share medical data, refusal to comply with Senate restrictions on AI development. Each accusation came with a threat, each threat with a demand. But the humans answered none of them with anger. Mark remained calm, his tone precise, every word measured as if rehearsed. Hannah handed him a small data tablet. "Sir, the Senate's Intelligence Council just confirmed they have deployed observation fleets around Mars," she whispered. Mark nodded slightly. "Expected?" Then he looked up again. "Chancellor, we are aware of the Senate's fleets in Sol's outer orbit. They are welcome to observe, but they will find nothing they can control." The Chancellor's face turned from silver to a dark violet hue, a sign of fury in his species. "You threaten us, human?" Mark leaned forward. "No, we remind you of your own laws. You have no right to occupy a system not under your charter." One of the alien generals, a hulking reptilian being with deep orange scales, slammed his claw on the railing. "You forget your place, human. Your planet is a child in the galactic order." Mark looked at him evenly. A child that learned to defend itself while the adults were busy arguing. Again murmurs spread. The general bared his fangs but said nothing more. Daniel Crow, the younger envoy, leaned in quietly. "Sir, maybe tone it down?" Mark whispered back. "They need to hear confidence, not fear." "They only understand strength." The council's lower lights dimmed as the Chancellor signaled for silence. "Enough. The Senate will deliberate on the matter of Earth. Your statement is recorded. You may return to your vessel." But Mark did not move. Instead, he placed his hand on the console before him, activating a holographic display that projected a map of the Sol system into the center of the chamber. This, he said clearly, is what you intend to control. But you don't understand it yet. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward the projection. Around the sun, holographic orbits appeared. Earth, Mars, the colonies, the stations. Then around them, smaller spheres began to appear. Hundreds of them, then thousands. Satellites, drones, relay platforms. The alien representatives leaned forward. These are our defense satellites, Mark continued. You've heard of them as weapons. They are not. They are shields. We call them the Atlas Net. They are designed to protect not just Earth, but any ship of any species within our system. That includes yours. Confusion rippled through the crowd. The Chancellor frowned. You expect us to believe that your weapons are meant for protection? Mark replied, I don't expect belief. I expect verification. You can send your own inspectors. But know this. While you were debating control, we built protection. For the first time, the Senate quieted not from authority, but from doubt. The image of the Atlas Net lingered in the air like a silent question. The Chancellor stood slowly. Ambassador Reed, the Senate will reconvene in 48 hours. Until then, you will remain under observation. Mark bowed slightly. We anticipated that, Chancellor. Our ship will remain in orbit, broadcasting live so the people of the galaxy can see what happens here. That sentence struck like a blade. Broadcast live. Every word the Senate said, every action it took would now be public record. It was a move of diplomatic genius, one that no other species had ever dared to attempt. The Chancellor hesitated, then turned away. The hearing was adjourned. As the humans walked out through the grand archway, Hannah spoke softly. Do you think they'll attack us? Mark's gaze stayed fixed ahead. If they do, they'll show the galaxy exactly what they are. Outside the Senate building, on the marble-like streets of Vareth Prime, thousands of alien citizens had gathered to watch the humans. They had expected monsters or tyrants. Instead, they saw calm, composed figures who walked through a sea of hostility with quiet confidence. Some of the citizens even clapped their forelimbs or flicked their luminescent fins in signs of respect. Daniel looked around, whispering, They're watching us like we're legends. Mark replied softly, No, they're watching us because for the first time in centuries, someone told the Senate no. Their transport ship rose from the landing platform, disappearing into the haze of the alien city's upper atmosphere. Inside, Mark removed his diplomatic insignia and stared out the window. The Senate would deliberate, yes, but he already knew what was coming. They would move to sanction Earth, isolate it, maybe even attempt to neutralize its systems. Hannah sat across from him. They think we're reckless, Mark smiled faintly. Then let them think that. The more they underestimate us, the stronger our next move will be. She looked at him curious. And what move is that? He turned back to the stars. Making them realize humanity doesn't play by their rules. We write new ones. The camera would have followed the ship as it vanished into orbit, leaving behind the glow of Vareth Prime and the silent tension building across the galaxy. The Council had tried to intimidate humanity, but the calm defiance of 3 humans had done something far more powerful. It had planted fear in the hearts of the most powerful beings in the universe. And somewhere deep in the Senate's hidden chambers, as officials whispered in secret, one alien voice trembled. If they are this bold now, what happens when they stop being polite? The great chamber of the Galactic Consular Senate glowed in deep crimson. The air was thick with energy and anger. The towering spires that surrounded the circular floor pulsed with the heartbeat of the galaxy's most powerful nations. Holographic sigils flickered above each seat, representing thousands of worlds. The Senate was in full session, and the fate of one small blue planet was about to be decided. Every representative spoke at once, their words blending into a storm of languages and tones. Some voices hissed through mandibles, others vibrated through membranes, while others spoke in light and color. At the center, a tall silver podium shimmered as the High Chancellor struck it with his staff. The chamber fell silent, leaving only the hum of distant machinery. The time has come, the Chancellor declared. His tone was cold, sharp, and absolute. The vote for sanctions against Earth will now begin. From the center of the platform, 3 humans stood. Ambassador Mark Reed was again at the front, his hands clasped behind his back. His aides, Hannah Ward and Daniel Crow, flanked him in silence. They had been summoned back to the Senate for judgment. Around them, alien faces stared down with suspicion and disdain. Hannah felt the heat of 100 camera drones circling above. Every gesture, every blink was being broadcast to billions across the galaxy. She whispered, "They already made up their minds." Mark replied softly, "Then it's our job to make them question it." The Chancellor extended one silver arm toward the floating holographic display at the center of the chamber. By decree of the Senate's Consular Council, the following will be decided: whether humanity shall be restricted from further interstellar development, sanctioned economically, and placed under observation until deemed non-threatening. A low rumble spread through the chamber. Hundreds of alien representatives lifted their hands, claws, tendrils, or luminous appendages. Holographic icons appeared in the air above each seat. Red for sanction, blue for neutrality, green for alliance. The colors began to pulse. Hannah's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the glowing icons. One after another, red lights filled the chamber. Mark remained motionless, his expression unreadable. The Chancellor looked down, his metallic face reflecting the scarlet light. The motion passes by overwhelming majority. Sanctions are approved. The announcement echoed like a death sentence. The humans stood alone in a storm of alien eyes. The translator fields buzzed with the noise of approval, as many alien envoys shouted in agreement. The decision meant that Earth would be isolated. No trade, no access to wormholes, no energy supplies from the Council grid. For most civilizations, such punishment meant collapse within weeks. But Mark Reed did not react with fear. He simply raised his head and said, "You have every right to act in your own interest." "So do we." The Chancellor's silver features twisted. "You speak as if you are not affected by this decision." Mark turned toward the vast crowd. "We prepared for this 2 years ago." The entire chamber erupted into confusion. Whispers, disbelief, accusations, all translated into a deafening roar. The Chancellor struck his staff against the podium. "Explain yourself, human." Mark gestured to Hannah. She activated her tablet, projecting a three-dimensional image of the solar system. Around it spun thousands of small light points, forming a glowing web. "This," she said clearly, "is the Helios Relay Network, built entirely within the Sol system. Independent of any Senate energy grid, trade route, or wormhole link. You could close every stargate and every corridor in the galaxy, and Earth would still function." The alien crowd stirred uneasily. Some whispered to their aides. Others watched the projection with fascination or disbelief. One alien representative, a crystalline being with 8 glowing eyes, stood and shouted, "Impossible. Such infrastructure requires interstellar cooperation." Mark replied calmly, "We didn't cooperate. We innovated. Humanity built our own relay technology, quantum-based, self-sustaining, and immune to external shutdown commands." The Chancellor's tone hardened. "You dare defy the unity of the Senate?" Mark smiled faintly. "We don't defy unity. We reject dependence." For a moment, silence fell again. The human's calm words struck harder than any weapon. Daniel Crow stepped forward. "Chancellor, before you think of enforcing your sanctions by force, you should know something else. The Atlas Net doesn't just protect Earth. It extends security to all trade vessels entering Sol space. We've already begun assisting neutral species who requested safe passage." That revelation sent another wave of chaos through the assembly. The aliens began to argue among themselves. Some shouted that humanity was stealing influence. Others demanded the Senate investigate, and a few even called for an alliance with Earth. The Chancellor raised both arms, silencing them. "You have broken the law, humans. You have created independent structures outside of Senate authority. You will dismantle these networks immediately." Mark stepped forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. "We will not dismantle something that protects lives. Not yours, not ours. If the Senate wishes to send an inspection fleet, it may do so. We will welcome them. But know this. Your fleets will operate under Earth's defensive protocols. We will not allow any hostile actions inside Sol territory." The Chancellor's tone turned venomous. "Are you threatening the Senate with war?" Mark's eyes were steady. "No, I'm warning you that humanity is no longer helpless." That line froze the entire chamber. Even the translation systems hesitated. On distant worlds, billions watched the broadcast. They saw not arrogance, but quiet defiance, the kind of strength that comes from preparation, not aggression. The Chancellor spoke again, trying to regain control. "Your arrogance will doom you, Ambassador. Isolation is the fate of those who defy the Council. Mark looked up at the vast ring of alien faces. Then perhaps it is time for the Council to ask why isolation doesn't frighten us anymore. He turned off the hologram, leaving the chamber dark except for the faint glow of the Senate's walls. You have power, Chancellor. But power without understanding is useless. You see us as reckless. We see ourselves as prepared, the Chancellor gestured sharply. Remove the human delegation from the chamber. As guards approached, Mark raised a hand. There's one more thing. The guards froze, waiting for orders. Mark continued. The broadcast you've all been part of. It's being transmitted live to over 1,000 worlds, not just Senate territories. Every citizen watching will know the truth of this meeting. They'll see what fear looks like when it hides behind authority. The Chancellor's silver face darkened. You will regret this, Mark replied softly. No, Chancellor. The galaxy will remember it. The guards escorted them out, but not with force. The chamber behind them erupted in chaos once more. Alliances were breaking, doubts spreading like cracks through a mirror. As the humans stepped into the long corridor leading to their shuttle bay, Hannah turned to Mark. We just told them we were ready for their worst move. What happens now? Mark didn't look back. Now they'll test us. They'll send ships, probes, spies, let them. Every move they make will expose how desperate they are to control what they don't understand. Daniel walked beside them, tense. Do you think they'll go to war? Mark finally stopped, turning toward the massive glass wall that showed the city below, a glittering maze of alien lights, ships, and towers. If they do, he said quietly, they'll realize war isn't the only way to lose. Their shuttle lifted into the golden air of Vareth Prime. Below, the Senate burned with light as it prepared its next move. Above, humanity watched unshaken. Back on Earth, in silent orbit around the moon, the Defense Directorate already had its systems online, its algorithms running and its shields humming with quiet anticipation. The moment the Senate tried to act, the galaxy would see something no one had ever seen before. What happens when a small world refuses to bow? The Council thought it had contained humanity. But as the transmission ended across the stars, the truth spread faster than any order the Senate could give. Earth wasn't isolated. It was ready. The Galactic Council chamber glowed in a deep shade of violet, the signal of emergency session. The floor beneath the transparent crystal dome shimmered with thousands of floating lights, each one representing a world watching live. Every species in the Council had gathered, scaled, furred, plated, and luminous, forming a living storm of color and movement. The silence in the air felt like the moment before a thunderclap. At the center, suspended on the main platform, was a holographic image of the Sol system, slowly rotating before the assembly. The High Chancellor stood, his silver body reflecting the holographic sun. Reports confirm that human defense networks have interfered with Council operations, he declared. His voice vibrated through the chamber. Our fleets dispatched to observe Earth have gone silent. Every ship in that region has ceased communication. The words sent waves of noise through the chamber. Representatives of hundreds of species spoke at once. Some demanded retaliation, others called for investigation. The Chancellor raised his hand, silencing them. The Council cannot allow a primitive world to humiliate this institution. We must act immediately. From the upper tiers, an admiral of the Senate fleet stepped forward, her armor gleaming with faint red light. Our ships were dispatched with strict non-aggression orders. Their disappearance is an open act of defiance. I request permission to deploy a containment force to the Sol system. The request echoed through the chamber. It was a dangerous word, containment. Every delegate knew it meant military action, not diplomacy. Before the vote could begin, a clear voice cut through the tension. Before you deploy your forces, perhaps you should ask what happened to the first ones. Every eye turned toward the human delegation section. Ambassador Mark Reed stood there calm and composed, his hands behind his back. He looked as if he had expected this meeting all along. The Chancellor's voice turned sharp. You are not invited to speak, Ambassador. Mark walked forward onto the platform. You don't need to invite us. You're already broadcasting this to every world that questions your leadership. I think they deserve to know what you've done. A murmur spread again. The Chancellor's tone grew darker. Explain yourself, human. Mark gestured, and a small holographic device in his hand activated. The air shimmered, and suddenly, the image of a massive alien warship appeared. one of the Senate's containment vessels. Its hull was intact, but its systems were dead. The ship floated in silence above Mars, its crew unharmed but paralyzed by suspended gravity fields. "This," Mark said quietly, "is one of your fleets. We disabled them the moment they entered our system." The chamber erupted in uproar. Some shouted accusations, others disbelief. The Chancellor struck his staff on the floor. "This is an act of war." Mark's expression did not change. "No, this is an act of restraint. No one was harmed. No weapon fired. We simply turned your technology off." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. The Council's most advanced fleets paralyzed effortlessly without a single shot. It defied every military rule the galaxy had known. The Admiral's metallic jaw tightened. "How could you disable our ships? They are protected by encryption older than your civilization." Mark replied, "We didn't break your encryption. We bypassed it. You rely on artificial navigators that synchronize through the Senate's network. We built our systems to operate without that dependency. Once they entered our system, their own synchronization became their weakness." The Chancellor's eyes glowed faintly. "You turned our strength against us." Mark nodded. "Exactly. That's what humanity does best." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with disbelief and fear. The Chancellor finally spoke again, slower this time. "And what of the crews? Did you destroy them?" "No," Mark said firmly. "Every crew member is alive. Their ships are suspended in orbit and fully operational. Once you decide to stop threatening us, we'll release them." The Admiral slammed her clawed fist against the railing. "You hold Senate citizens hostage." Mark looked directly at her. "We're holding no one hostage. You came uninvited into our home. We made sure you didn't break anything." The statement was simple, but its impact was devastating. The council chamber exploded with debate. Representatives argued loudly, some calling for full invasion, others demanding negotiations. For the first time, cracks appeared in the Senate's unity. Several member species murmured their support for humanity's right to self-defense. Hannah Ward, standing behind Mark, leaned in and whispered, "You're playing a dangerous game." Mark replied quietly, "Sometimes the only way to win a game is to change the rules." The Chancellor tried to restore control. "This defiance cannot go unpunished. Humanity must answer to the Council." Mark's gaze was steady. "We already have. You tried to neutralize us. You failed. Now the question is, will you keep pretending we're the threat, or will you finally face the truth?" The Chancellor's voice shook with controlled anger. "And what truth is that, human?" Mark's reply echoed through the chamber, slow and deliberate. "That you've built your peace on fear. And fear doesn't work on us." The room froze. The translation fields carried his words across every world in the Council's reach. Billions of viewers saw a species that stood against an empire without trembling. After several tense seconds, the Chancellor said, "We will not tolerate this humiliation. You will surrender control of your systems immediately." Mark smiled faintly. "That's not going to happen. But I'll make you an offer instead. Withdraw your fleets and your sanctions, and we'll open our defense network to your observers. You can see exactly what we've built and how it works. It protects, not destroys. That's more than can be said for your fleets." The Chancellor looked stunned. "You offer us access to your technology?" "Yes," Mark said, "on one condition: transparency. Everything about this hearing, this entire crisis, must remain public. No lies, no redacted reports. Let the galaxy decide who acts in good faith." The chamber erupted again. Transparency was a threat more dangerous than any weapon. The Council's strength relied on secrecy and control. The Chancellor whispered something to his aides. Then, after a long silence, he spoke. "You are clever, human. But cleverness is not power." Mark met his gaze. "It depends on how you use it." He turned off the projection and stepped back. The delegation left the chamber, leaving chaos behind. Outside, in the endless corridors of Vareth Prime, Hannah exhaled slowly. "They'll never accept this." "You know that," Mark replied. "They don't have to. They just have to doubt themselves long enough for others to start asking questions." Daniel Crow looked uneasy. "If they send another fleet?" Mark's eyes hardened. "Then we'll do what we did before, disable, not destroy. But this time the whole galaxy will be watching." They walked through the corridor surrounded by alien guards. But there was no hostility in their steps. Even some of the guards glanced at them with quiet curiosity, maybe even respect. When they reached their shuttle, the stars of Vareth Prime shimmered beyond the glass dome. Mark looked out and said, almost to himself, They thought humanity would break. Instead, we just made them look in a mirror. Back in the council chamber, the chancellor watched the humans' departure. Around him, the delegates still argued. The cracks were widening faster than he could control. One aide approached nervously. "Chancellor, the citizens of 12 systems have begun demonstrations. They demand explanations." The chancellor's metallic hand tightened around his staff. "Then we'll give them one. Humanity must be silenced before their defiance spreads." But deep in his mind, even he wondered if that was still possible. For the first time in galactic history, a single small world had turned the Senate's greatest weapon into silence. The fleets that once ruled the stars now drifted powerless above a blue planet that refused to kneel. And across the galaxy, whispers began to rise, whispers of a new balance, one born not of fear, but of defiance. The chamber of the Galactic Council was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It stretched beyond sight, built inside a hollowed moon orbiting the twin suns of Varethus. The floor was a sea of shifting light, transparent in some places and glowing in others, alive with the movement of hundreds of alien delegations. Each species sat in circular platforms that floated in the air like hovering islands. The voices of translators hummed across the vast space, merging into a constant background murmur. It was a place of unimaginable authority, where decisions shaped the fate of thousands of worlds. At the center of this monumental structure, 3 humans stood alone on a small metal platform. Ambassador Daniel Holt, a tall man in a plain gray suit, kept his face expressionless. Behind him stood Commander Lyra Evans and scientist Dr. Jonah Malik, their uniforms crisp, their posture tense. They looked like strangers in a place that had existed for eons before Earth even had writing. Above them floated the insignia of the Galactic Council, an endless spiral of stars. The High Speaker, a towering being of translucent flesh and glowing veins, addressed the assembly. "Representatives of the younger world, Earth, stand before this council under charges of technological violation and resource tampering within restricted zones." The voice echoed through the chamber, cold and layered like multiple beings speaking as one. Around them, alien delegates stirred. Some looked curious, others hostile. The atmosphere was suffocating. Daniel took a breath, forcing calm into his voice. "We are aware of your concerns, High Speaker, but we have not violated any treaties. We only defended our system when attacked by unregistered vessels." A wave of murmurs spread through the chamber. The High Speaker's form pulsed brighter. "Unregistered? Those ships bore the mark of the Council's peace fleet. You destroyed them without authorization." Lyra stepped forward, her tone steady. "We did not destroy them. We disabled them. No lives were lost." The word disabled rippled through the assembly. The alien representatives whispered among themselves, their strange languages flickering in the translator systems. The High Speaker tilted its head. "Explain how a species as young as yours could disable a fleet of this council without aggression." Daniel gave a faint smile. "We learned from you. Your fleet systems rely on synchronization signals from your core networks. When they entered our territory, our defense AIs isolated those frequencies and inverted them. Your ships shut themselves down. We didn't fire a shot. For a long moment there was silence, then chaos. Dozens of delegates shouted at once. Holographic light flared as translation fields struggled to keep up. Some demanded sanctions. Others surprisingly applauded the logic of the maneuver. The High Speaker raised its elongated hand, restoring order. "You admit to weaponizing information technology against this council?" Daniel's voice stayed calm. "We use defense, not weapons. You came to us uninvited. We simply refused to be controlled." The chamber vibrated with tension. The council's authority had never been questioned so directly. Every eye watched the humans standing small but unshaken in the storm of power. A delegate from the Archon species, a hulking creature with metallic plates instead of skin, rose from its seat. "Your defiance threatens the balance of the council. If every young race acted as you have, the galaxy would fall into chaos." Dr. Malik stepped forward, his tone quiet but sharp. "Balance built on submission isn't stability. It's fear. Maybe chaos is overdue." Gasps filled the chamber. Several translation systems froze, struggling to interpret the human tone of defiance and irony. Even the High Speaker seemed uncertain how to respond. Daniel sensed the moment and pushed forward. "You call this a council of peace. Yet you govern through silence, through fear of punishment. We have seen your fleets. We have studied your laws. You don't maintain order, you maintain obedience. And maybe that worked for 1,000 worlds before us, but it ends with us. The High Speaker's light dimmed to a dangerous crimson. Are you threatening this council? Daniel met its gaze, his voice slow and clear. No, we're offering you something better. Honesty. You fear what you don't understand. And you don't understand humans. The chamber was frozen. Even the translation system seemed to hesitate. Then suddenly one of the alien delegates, the crystalline representative of the Thalen cluster, spoke. Perhaps the humans have a point. If they can neutralize our fleets without harm, perhaps their methods should be studied, not condemned. That broke the silence again. Half the chamber shouted in protest. The other half whispered in cautious agreement. The council had never been so divided. The High Speaker's authority flickered visibly, its body dimming and brightening in rhythm with the chaos around it. Commander Lyra whispered to Daniel. They're turning on themselves. That's the plan, he replied quietly. The High Speaker slammed a staff of pure energy onto the platform, releasing a thunderous shockwave. The lights of the chamber dimmed. Enough. Humanity's actions have endangered the unity of this galaxy. You will surrender your systems to council oversight or face isolation. Daniel took one step closer to the speaker's podium. You've already isolated us. You banned trade, cut communication, and sent warships. And still, here we stand. You can't isolate something that's already self-sufficient. The chamber trembled as if the moon itself was reacting to his words. Holographic transmissions from thousands of worlds began flooding the council's display. Civilizations were watching, and many were beginning to question their leaders. Daniel continued, You've made us your enemy. But in truth, we've done what your council forgot how to do. We've adapted. We didn't need your approval to survive. And maybe that's what scares you the most. The High Speaker's light pulsed violently. Humanity will regret this arrogance. Daniel looked around the chamber. Arrogance? No, just perspective. For centuries you've ruled the stars because no one could challenge your control. But power changes hands eventually. You of all species should know that. Lyra added quietly. If you fear us, maybe you should ask yourselves why. The council chamber fell silent once more. The High Speaker's voice grew softer, almost uncertain. What do you want from us? Daniel smiled faintly. Nothing. Just understanding. You came to us expecting submission. You found equals instead. Remember that when you look at the next young race you try to control. He turned and began to walk away. The chamber buzzed with a mix of outrage and admiration. Some delegates shouted threats, others watched in quiet respect. The human delegation exited through the energy gate, their steps echoing in the endless silence that followed. Outside, their shuttle waited on the landing platform. Beyond the transparent dome, the galaxy stretched in a vast swirl of light. Lyra looked out at the stars. Do you think they'll come after us again? Daniel answered, They can't afford to, not now. If they attack, the other species will question everything. They'll lose their grip faster than they realize. Dr. Malik chuckled softly. You turned the entire council into our audience. That's all we needed, Daniel said. Let them argue. The longer they talk, the stronger we become. As their ship detached from the moon and began its descent into the warp field, the council chamber behind them erupted again in furious debate. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council wasn't united, and all across the stars whispers began to rise about the small blue world that refused to kneel. On one quiet planet far from the council's reach, a transmission flickered across human command screens. It contained a simple message intercepted from the council's secure channels. The message read, The human threat is no longer military. It is ideological. Back in orbit, Daniel watched the stars blur into streaks as their ship entered the jump corridor. They finally understand, he said softly. They thought we were dangerous because of our weapons. They were wrong. We're dangerous because we think differently. The ship vanished into the void, leaving behind a galaxy now uncertain of its rulers, and a council forced to face something it had never known before. Fear of humanity's mind, not its machines. The chamber lights dimmed as the Galactic Council reconvened for what was expected to be the most crucial session in centuries. Rumors of division had spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Hundreds of worlds waited for the outcome, and the air in the chamber was heavy with tension. The High Speaker floated above the central dais, its translucent body flickering between calm blue and unstable crimson. Around it, The floating platforms of alien representatives pulsed with light as their occupants prepared to witness history. And then, as the doors slid open, 3 humans walked into the chamber again. The murmurs began instantly. Ambassador Daniel Holt led the way, his expression unreadable. Commander Lyra Evans followed, her eyes scanning the alien crowd, and Dr. Jonah Malik brought up the rear with a small device clasped in his hands. Every species in the room recognized them, the humans who had shattered the illusion of the Council's invincibility. The High Speaker's voice rolled across the chamber like thunder. Earth representatives, you stand before the Galactic Council once again. This assembly has gathered to decide the fate of your species. You will listen and answer truthfully. Daniel didn't bow. He simply nodded. We've always been truthful. Maybe that's what you don't like. An uproar followed instantly. Dozens of alien voices rose in outrage. The High Speaker raised a glowing hand to silence them. Enough. Humanity is charged with undermining the unity of the galaxy. Your interference has led to rebellion in 6 systems. Civilizations once loyal now question this Council's guidance. You have unleashed chaos. Dr. Malik stepped forward, speaking softly but firmly. We didn't unleash anything. We revealed what was already there. Fear, oppression, and silence. You built this Council on control, not cooperation. We simply refused to be controlled. The High Speaker's form flickered darker. Your defiance has inspired revolt. Entire sectors have refused tribute. Armies stand ready to fight. Are you proud of this destruction? Lyra met the Speaker's glowing gaze. No, but maybe it's time someone stood up to your version of peace. The room was deathly quiet. Even the translators seemed hesitant to echo her words. Daniel stepped up to the platform's center. You call us dangerous because we think differently. You accuse us of destabilizing your empire. Maybe you're right. But what you don't understand is that we don't want to rule this galaxy. We just want to live in it. Free, equal, and unthreatened. Can your council offer that to anyone? High Speaker hesitated, the glow around it dimming for a fraction of a second. You speak of equality, but equality among species brings chaos. Order requires hierarchy. Then your order is built on slavery, Daniel replied coldly. The words hit the chamber like a blade. Alien delegates froze. Even the High Speaker faltered. The silence stretched until a deep rumbling voice came from the back. It was the Archon delegate, the massive metal-skinned being who had once argued for Earth's destruction. Perhaps the human speaks truth. My world has long served this Council's fleets. We obey, but we do not prosper. More murmurs followed. The crystalline Thalen representative spoke next. We too have questioned this order. The humans may be reckless, but they have courage. A second later, a hiss of protest came from a reptilian envoy. They are a threat. Their words infect the weak-minded. Crush them before their ideas spread. Daniel turned to face the entire chamber. You can't crush an idea. You can kill people, burn cities, silence voices, but you can't stop a thought once it takes root. That's why you're afraid of us. You built a galaxy that doesn't know how to question authority, and we just reminded it how. The uproar was deafening. Holographic feeds flickered to life, broadcasting the session to billions across the stars. Some species cheered for the humans. Others screamed for their punishment. The High Speaker's light flared violently, shaking the chamber itself. Silence, it bellowed. This council will restore order. Humanity will be neutralized before their defiance spreads further. The moment those words were spoken, Daniel exchanged a glance with Lyra. She gave a slight nod. Dr. Malik pressed a button on his handheld device. Instantly, every holographic display across the chamber changed. The council's emblem vanished, replaced by a new image, the spiral of the galaxy itself, marked with hundreds of blinking lights. These, Malik said clearly, are your colonies, your fleets, your communication hubs, and these lights. He tapped the device again, and half of the lights changed color. Represent the systems that no longer obey you. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Delegates turned toward one another in disbelief. Daniel's voice cut through the noise. While you debated our punishment, your empire was already collapsing. Entire sectors have declared independence. They've seen what humanity stands for, and they're done living under fear. The High Speaker's form pulsed wildly. You dare to tamper with our networks? Malik shook his head. We didn't tamper with anything. We only shared information. Your own citizens made their choice. The chamber erupted again, half in fury, half in chaos. Some delegates tried to contact their worlds through communication links, but the transmissions failed. The Council's control grid was fracturing in real time. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady amid the panic. You tried to neutralize us with politics and power, but we didn't need weapons to win. We only needed truth. Daniel added quietly, and now the galaxy sees you for what you are. The High Speaker's energy flared brighter than ever, its voice shaking the room. You have doomed countless worlds. Do you not understand what you've done? Daniel met its gaze. We've given them a choice. That's something you never offered. For a long time, no one spoke. Then, one by one, several platforms disengaged from the central chamber and drifted away. Delegates from independent worlds left the assembly, without permission, breaking protocol that had been followed for millennia. The Council's unity was gone. The High Speaker's glow dimmed until only a faint shimmer remained. You will be hunted, it said softly. No world will shelter you. Daniel's expression didn't change. Then we'll make our own path. Humanity always does. He turned to leave, but before he reached the exit, the Thalen delegate's crystalline body flickered with light. Wait, it said. If the humans stand for freedom, then I stand with them. Another delegate joined in, then another. Within moments, nearly a third of the chamber's platforms glowed in support. The High Speaker could only watch as its empire crumbled before its eyes. Daniel looked back one last time. You tried to neutralize us, but all you did was awaken something you couldn't control. With that, the humans walked out of the chamber. The heavy doors closed behind them, sealing the chaos within. Outside, their shuttle awaited, engines glowing softly in the pale light of Varethus's twin suns. As it lifted off, Lyra looked down at the moon below, where centuries of galactic power were collapsing into confusion. Do you think they'll recover? She asked quietly. Daniel shook his head. Not the same way. They'll either rebuild on truth or fall trying to keep their lies alive. Malik smiled faintly. And humanity? Daniel looked out at the endless stars. We'll do what we always do. Survive, learn, and move forward. Their ship entered the jump field, disappearing into a streak of light. Behind them, the Galactic Council's control shattered completely. Worlds once bound by fear began to speak freely for the first time in generations. A new age was coming, one born not from conquest but from courage. Across the stars, a single message echoed through the new communication networks spreading from Earth's satellites. The age of silence is over. The galaxy will never forget. The day humanity stood before the Council and spoke the truth. And somewhere deep in the void, the High Speaker's dying words still lingered unheard by most. We tried to neutralize them, but they changed everything instead. The galaxy would remember that day forever.